Chapter 1, Fox. He suddenly found himself in the heart of a beaten road, burdened by a backpack and 3 swords hanging awkwardly around his waist. What the ah? A sudden and sharp sensation struck him, piercing him to a knee. Very much less than downloading information, very much greater than. Lucas clutched his head. Visions cascaded, a maelstrom of images, books, hand signs, all bombarding him to the ground. So much information, he gasped. His mind stretching, taut as a drum, ripping around the relentless barrage. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, it ceased. The visions evaporated, leaving Lucas reeling, disoriented, sprawled on the beaten path. As Lucas slowly gathered his wits, the world around him seemed to steady, though the echo of the visions still rang in his ears. Task: arrive safely at Konohagakure. What the fuck? 4 weeks later. It's all a dream. That's what I kept telling myself in those early days, or maybe weeks. I didn't fucking know. Time had lost its meaning, boring on like a summer afternoon. The entire day, all I did was walk, eat, and pass, God knows how long, building a damn tent. To not even sleep, just lie awake in it, restless, catching at best an hour or 2 of shut eye. My body was always so alert, and I didn't even know why. The entire night, every tiny sound jolted through me. It was ridiculous, really. If this was a dream, my subconscious was on something, because this isn't normal. Also, if you're dreaming, you wouldn't really know you're dreaming, right? You also wouldn't be feeling the blisters on your feet, the aching in your muscles, the constant hunger gnawing at you. They were all too fucking tangible to be figments of your imagination, or whatever. As days blended into weeks, the hope of this being a mere dream dimmed, replaced by a stark acceptance. I found myself speaking to the stars each night, sharing my fears, my loneliness, venting my anger at the fuckers that had put me in this situation. There was a strange comfort in voicing my thoughts, even if the only reply was the soft rustling of leaves. I kept moving, though I wasn't even sure why anymore. Perhaps I was clinging to a sliver of hope that I'd wake up in my bed, realizing this was all just a vivid nightmare. But as I angrily packed up my things, my frustration boiled over. 5 in the morning, and not an ounce of sleep. The entire night, I had been sprawled at this abandoned farmer's field, hidden underneath this old barn-looking place. Well, at least I hadn't need my tent tonight, but let me tell you, my back was really no fan of this whole sleeping on the ground situation. I pushed my damp hair back from my face. The morning dew had soaked everything, making my clothes stick to me like a second skin, only this one was cold, clammy, and absurdly heavy. With a resigned sigh, I picked up my belongings and set off again. It was not like I will be able to sleep anyway. So I went my way, back to the road. Yet, as I walked, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind, a fear that perhaps there was no road to return to. Well, not the literal road, I could see it in the distance already, but the metaphorical one, the one back to my life, my world. The thought of that being gone was terrifying, yet somehow, thrilling. God, listen to me. I kept moving, my boots crunching on the gravel, trying to walk off whatever that last thought was. The scenery started to shift around me. The fields, with grass still wet from morning dew, turned into this dense forest of fir and spruce. They were like these huge, silent watchers, casting long shadows across my path, wrapping me up in a world that felt weirdly alien and yet, so familiar. Like, I couldn't shake this weird feeling, like my brain was crammed with someone else's Google Maps. Suddenly, I knew stuff about this place, intimate, detailed stuff. Like how I was tiptoeing around Kajita Province, entering the Kajita Forest, this massive forest that spread its green fingers all over the Land of Fire's northeast corner. It was wild, kissing the shores of the Fire Sea and flirting with Ryuchi Cave's foothills. At its heart, the forest was thick and untamed, sprinkled with villages that seemed to pop up like defiant specks, and roads that cut through the trees like they were nothing. Like, I actually remember flipping through a book once, about these forest roads. They're always wrestling with the wild, tiny saplings making bold moves in the middle of the path, storms playing dominoes with the trees. Nature's winning more than losing in this tug-of-war. The road I'm on now is smothered in pine needles, like a forgotten blanket of rust. It's supposed to be this big deal road, connecting Taka and the Hokage province, but it's more like a secret passage. It feels like it's meant for lost souls, like me. Fuck, I'm cringe. Well, I walked. I walked till the sun passed, till the moon came. And by the time I decided to stop, it was not because of the darkness around me, but because my stomach growled. So I went off the road, looking for a cozy place, found a warm place, well, somewhat warm, kindled my fire and started on my tent. My goddamn tent. With its fucking sticks, beams that didn't went nowhere, until they do and there's something fucking jammed in its place. And then 2 more hours of fucking bullshit. Anyway. There I was, sitting on some nondescript rock, mindlessly shoveling rice into my mouth. Plain, bland rice. No spices, no flavor, just fucking rice. Washing it down with fistfuls of water I scooped from the river where I had camped by. The water wasn't clear, it wasn't pure, but fucked, it was all the I had. Hope I won't die from it. Now, or later, because I certainly filling my water with it. Splashing the stream's chill against my face, I felt the ragged edges of my journey. Barely a month on the road, and already, I longed for a shower, a bed, hot food. Oh, Christ! What wouldn't I do for good chunk of meat? Then, a rustle in the darkness, my hand flew instinctively to the hilt of my sword, every sense suddenly as sharp as a blade. Eyes narrowed, I scanned the shadows, searching for the source of the disturbance. The rustling, closer this time. From the west, up top. I stood still as stone, every fiber of my being focused on the unseen presence. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest scent of something foreign. Iron? No. Blood. My grip tightened on the sword, the metal cool and reassuring against my palm. Then, with a suddenness that made my heart leap, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, or at least the shape of one, cloaked in darkness, hunched over a tree branch. At ease, Nin, the figure uttered. But no, my grip didn't waver, despite the command. Trust seemed like a luxury I could ill afford, especially on nights like this, when every shadow seemed an enemy, every rustling leaf a potential threat. Nin, the man whispered, then half fell and half dropped from the top of the tree branches. I barely checked my startle, the man, there were so many kunais on his back. My hand quivered upon the hilt of my blade, yet I didn't dare to draw. Please, came a plea, faint, like a ghost. The figure, now on one knee, seemed more a shadow than a true danger, yet the chipped mask he wore made me hesitate. The Umbu were supposed to be elite, right? Ghosts that walked among men, unseen and unheard until they struck. Then get easily one-tapped by an Akatsuki member, or even the likes of Sound 4. I scrutinized the figure, the kunais jutting from his back, the ragged breathing, the strained effort to remain upright. He looked frail, yet what were my chances against an Umbu? Even in this weakened state, this wounded, kneeling man might as well be a viper coiled to strike. State your business, I demanded in a low growl. The figure barely managed a nod before collapsing forward, a broken puppet cut from its strings. I hesitated, torn between instinct and an unfamiliar, gnawing emotion. Compassion? Was that what this was? This strange, twisting feeling in my gut. I furrowed my brow. Was that even a real person in front of me? I watched as the blood, dark red, seeped into the grass, flooding the ground. Fuck, I let it go of my sword and moved towards the man. Kneeling beside him, I was unsure how to aid a dying man. Very much less than medical ninjutsu, very much greater than, fuck, it felt like a lighter had pierced and then turned on inside my brain. Images of anatomy, textbooks, Konoha's medical knowledge flooded my mind. I understood it now. "Are you from the land of fire?" the man whispered. "No." "Yes," my mouth replied on its own while I rushed to my backpack and rummaging through it as he mumbled something about the Chunin exams. "Yes," I exclaimed, finding what I needed. I ran back to the man, already opening my medical kit. "I'm Fox, an Umbu member." He struggled, his body spasming, and blood spraying onto the grass. "This scroll, important message for." My hands, guided by my newly awakened knowledge, worked swiftly, beginning to cut the clothes off the man. "For?" I asked. His breaths came in labored gasps, each one seeming to draw life from his body. "For Danzo. If you love the land of fire, take it. Bring it to him." "Don't worry, friend," I said, smiling and dropping my armored scissor to the side. I formed the seals: monkey, dragon, hare, and a verdant glow enveloped my hands, a warm, otherworldly light. And for a moment, I didn't know what to do. Then I knew, because of course I knew. I placed my glowing hands upon his back, where death had laid its cruel touch. The luminous energy surged forth, weaving into his wounds. "Please," Fox whispered. "You'll be fine," I reassured. The man grabbed onto my clothes. "Please," he whispered, "permiss me." A violent cough racked his body, sending another wave of blood across the verdant grass. His eyes, clouded with pain, searched mine for something, anything that resembled a promise. "I'll take it," I vowed solemnly, the weight of the promise settling on my shoulders like a mantle. I swallowed dry. "If you die, I'll ensure it reaches Danzo." Fox's hand, trembling and weak, reached into his cloak, extracting a tightly rolled scroll, sealed with the mark of Konoha. With the last of his strength, he pressed it into my hand. "Swear it," Fox gasped, his eyes imploring. "I swear," I said solemnly, clutching the scroll and pocketing it in my waist bag. You swear?" "Good." Then Fox, with a final whisper of gratitude, finally closed his eyes, a quiet smile spread across his mask. His chest rose and fell one final time before it stilled. And rose again. "Oh, thank God," I sighed in relief and went back to work. Chapter 2, drenched and miserable, the glow from my hands cast eerie shadows across the clearing, as I worked tirelessly to mend what was broken. The energy, pulsing with life, seemed almost sentient, seeking out the ravages of war within the man's body. Was this how chakra worked? As I channeled it, the man's labored breathing eased, his spasms subsided. The blood, once a relentless tide, now slowed to a mere trickle. The wounds, horrific in their savagery, began to close, knitting together under the guidance of my power. I couldn't help but marvel at the wonder of it all. This was so awesome. After healing what I could, I released my jutsu. Started cleaning his wounds, bandage him everything up. It was only then that I realized that Fox was not he, but a she, a Mrs. Umbu agent. I sat back on my heels. No, I shook my head. I needed to think. Now, what to do with her? I couldn't just piggyback it to the village, could I? Nah. Not only her wounds would open up, but it was a 5-day trek to Konoha. I grimaced. Then a light went on inside me. Brilliant. I murmured to myself, a plan forming in the depths of my mind. I went back to my camp, my tent, and destroyed my hours of work. I rummaged through its parts. Yeah, this might do, this too, and this. After picking up everything needed, I started. Weave the cover through the tent's 2 sturdiest beams, my hands working deftly to form an impromptu litter. It was a lopsided setup. I could only manage to lift one end, leaving the other to scuff along the ground. But it was something. With the yet bloody kunai, I sliced a strip from my only blanket, fastened it to another beam with a steady hand. Stepping back, I surveyed my work. It was far from ideal, the kind of thing that made you shrug rather than nod. But, well, sometimes, good enough truly was. I looked back at her and, as I watched, a wave of realization washed over me. It was one of those moments, you know, where everything seems to slow down and you're left questioning the very fabric of yourself. There she was, sleeping, or at least, I hoped she was just sleeping, and here I was, what was I doing? Have I gone mad? Why, there is an injured person in my care and I'm not giving a fuck. When did I even stop? I walked back to her, then with the utmost delicacy I could muster, I lifted Fox onto the stretcher, wincing at every moan she made. Then used the rest of the tent to cover her properly. She seemed so fragile. Who had left her this way? And why? I pondered over the turmoil in the land of fire that would necessitate such a desperate message for Danzo. What secrets did it hold that someone would risk their life for it? I was itching to peek at it, yet something inside me screamed not to. Then it dawned on me, the danger I'd put myself in. Here I was, in the untamed forests of the land of fire, with a critically wounded soul and a message people were willing to kill for. Fuck. I swung my backpack over my chest, tucking the last blanket around Fox, and carefully arranged the water skin and clothes near her on the stretcher. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I wedged myself between the poles, slinging the blanket strap over my head and resting it across my shoulders. My hands wrapped tightly around the poles, I lifted the stretcher, feeling its weight settle in a somewhat comforting way against my back. I started moving at a consistent pace, making my way to Konohagakure, the stretcher trailing a line behind me in the quiet woods. At a crossroads, I found a cedar signpost with 3 directions. The southeast arm, pointing back to the T road, was the path I had traveled all these weeks. It was adorned with shingles, each with the name of a village along the way. The western arm indicated the Natsu Road, wide and well-kept, leading straight to Konohagakure. I recalled reading about it once, how it was destined to make history as the first road to unite 2 hidden villages, boosting trade and prosperity between Konoha and Suna. The northwest arm, an offshoot of the T road, was barely visible, obscured by overgrowth. It bore a single, foreboding sign, Hokage. Glancing at it, calling it a road seemed almost humorous. It looked more like a neglected streambed, with ditches too choked with overgrowth or debris to drain properly. The Natsu Road seemed so much more welcoming, but the thought of traversing such a frequented path with an injured Umbu agent felt like a sure path to trouble. I'd made up my mind to take the Hokage route, braving the many broken roads that led to the village. I mean, there was danger on any road, but at least this way, I might avoid getting completely lost in the woods. Just as I was about to commit to it, I hesitated. What was I thinking? Quickly, I wheeled the stretcher around and dragged it back to the trees. Pausing to catch my breath, to allow my heart to calm, I then turned north. Off the roads, directly towards the village. The path less traveled, but perhaps our only chance. Following through the trees was more difficult than carrying Fox on the road, and the night certainly didn't help, but going out onto the road itself would be madness. People had almost killed her. I didn't even know the events that had led her to be stabbed with so many kunais, if she had run away or fought her attackers to their death. I didn't know. But the safest option was to act like we were on the run. So, our goal was clear: reach the village unseen, unnoticed by rogue ninja or wandering eyes. If our adversaries were indeed trailing us, it was only a matter of time before they deduced our destination. The village was the sanctuary we sought, and the Hokage path, the most likely course we would take. But now, under the veil of night and the guise of the forest, we moved, hoping the scant cover would shield us from prying eyes and lurking dangers. The moon cast a deceptive glow through the bare branches, tricking me into thinking I could see where I was stepping. Every step was a risk, roots ready to trip me, branches clawing at me, the ground uneven and treacherous. Each jolt of the stretcher over a root or rock made Fox cry out in pain, her quiet murmurs turning into sharp cries of anguish. In the midst of this uncertainty, I pushed my senses to their limits, peering into the darkness until my eyes hurt, listening for any hint of danger. The slightest rustle or whisper in the trees made me stop dead, straining my ears, holding my breath in fear of missing a sound, but also terrified of what those sounds might mean. I only moved on when I was sure it was just the wind. As the night wore on, exhaustion crept into my arms and legs, the cold night wind playing with my hair. The stretcher, which had seemed light at first, now felt like it was trying to drag me down. My stumbling wasn't just because of the uneven ground. The constant effort to stay upright was as draining as pulling the stretcher itself. If only O had more arms, or very much less than Hana no Mi, very much greater than images. Hand seals. Extra arms. Extra legs. Hours and hours of work. All of it speed through my head. Startled, I almost lost my grip. Fuck. I put down the stretcher, feeling the mark it had left on my shoulders. I stretched, trying to loosen the knots in my muscles, and knelt next to Fox. I was looking for our water skin, but I couldn't help glancing through the trees. I took of my backpack and putted it on my back. Then, hare. Dragon. Rat. Hana jutsu. I felt the familiar surge of energy, a blossoming force within me. My mind reached out, and in response, for extra legs, identical to my own, bursted forth from the bottom the stretcher. 4 arms spawned on top, fastening Fox to the stretcher. I smiled. It looked a bit weird, sure, but at that moment, it felt like the most brilliant thing ever. I stood there for a second, almost marveling at the extra limbs that now carried the stretcher, easing the burden on my exhausted body. The legs moved in sync with mine, as if they were a part of me. It was a weird sensation, but, all right. With this new support, we resumed our journey through the woods, a little lighter, a little faster. Then stopped. What was that? Fox moaned, and I quickly moved my hand trying to cover her mouth but only found her mask. Fuck. I turned slowly, scanning the darkness, my heart pounding. From where did this come from? Very much less than Yiro no Mi, very much greater than my vision zoomed. Passing the distance, the trees, the branches, and there, a flicker at the edge of my vision made me tense, and in an instant, I was crouching protectively over Fox. I was surprised to feel the sword's hilt solid in my grip, my focus almost entirely on the night. To the east, the shifting shadows began to take form. Masked figures emerged, running, their hands flailing in the air. My heart raced. Were they chasers? Then, my Yiro flickered out. No! Fox's moan pierced the air again. Rising swiftly, I felt my waist bag snag on a branch. My belongings spilled onto the grass. Muttering curses, I knelt to gather them, but a rogue gust snatched the scroll away. My eyes widened in horror as I watched it dance away, tumbling through the underbrush as if alive. Without thinking I sprang after it, feeling like a clown as the wind took it just out of my grasp. Again and again. Finally I pounced on it and quietly ran back to Fox with the crumpled scroll. The foots were drawing nearer. There was no telling exactly how close the riders were, or even if they were the ones who had pursued Fox. But I was determined not to find out. And so, we ran. The night air thick with mist and fog stretching its fingers from the sky as we galloped along, the stretcher and I moving as one through the woods. I had no plan other than to evade our pursuers. If they left the road to chase us through the dense forest, it would slow them down. But if among them was a tracker, they could find us just as easily off the road as on. Then, would be the one riddled with kunais. I swallowed. What should I do? The night, at least, would provide some cover. I pushed myself to run faster. When we encountered a massive boulder blocking our path, I was ready to stop, to veer aside, but something within me urged me on. Again, I was aware of a knowledge I didn't realize I possessed. As we neared the rock, I leapt, propelling us towards a towering spruce. Twigs snapped against my head and torso as I ascended, finally landing on a high branch, my feet carving grooves into the wood. What was this? I looked at the stretcher landing by my side. One leg was scratching one other, but everything seemed fine. Fox was still on it, looking. I don't know, not right. I wanted to stop, to really look at her, but we couldn't. There was no time. So we kept moving, trudging through the relentless night. The rain fell harder, turning the sky into a deeper shade of darkness, almost as if it was snuggling closer to the night instead of welcoming the morning. The branches became slippery, a treacherous mirror of my own weariness. My steps were sluggish, my body aching with each move. Then, as the trees thinned, I realized we'd come upon a creek, cutting across our ninja way. I stopped, panting heavily. My eyes darted across the expanse. Could I make that far? I peered down at the mist-shrouded waters below. It didn't look like Fox could survive this fall. Well, fuck the distance, could I even jump accurately enough to make to a branch on the other side? No. I shook my head. It is impossible, I thought, more to convince myself than out of belief. And with that, I went down. Changing our course, guiding the stretcher across the creek. In the back of my mind, I knew a tracker wouldn't find our footprints in the rushing water. Plus, the rain was our ally, erasing any traces of our journey on the forest floor. I fought my way through the overhanging branches, each one generously dousing me with its collected rainwater. But I pushed on, focusing on making the path clearer for Fox. We navigated slick, moss-covered rocks and waded through thick mud. Then, out of the mist, a granite ledge appeared, its surface speckled with green lichen, offering a semblance of shelter. It was large enough for us to hide both behind and under it. Though the world around it was obscured by fog, it was close enough for us to hear anyone who passed by. I tucked Fox and myself under the ledge and stood there, drenched and miserable.